Routine can protect you and erase you in the same breath. I've seen both sides of it. The rhythm of mornings can feel like a guardrail, keeping me upright when the rest of life threatens to spin out of control. There's comfort in the sound of water boiling, the scratch of a pen on paper, the feel of shoes laced in the same sequence. These patterns remind me that life has continuity, that I am still here. Yet the same rhythm that steadies me can also turn suffocating. The very guardrails that hold me up can also close me in. Days blur, not because they are empty, but because they have folded into one another until they feel indistinguishable. I know this ache personally. After retirement, mornings stretched before me without demand. At first, it felt like freedom, but quickly each day collapsed into the next. I woke early, made tea, opened my journal, and wrote the date at the top of the page. Beyond that, I could not tell one morning from another. The same words, the same motions, the same lifeless rhythm. What should have been a gift of time became a blur of nothing. Stephen lives on the side of structure. His days are stacked tightly: alarms, commutes, deadlines, family obligations. He tells me that routine keeps him functioning, but he also admits it leaves him feeling lifeless, as though he's become little more than a cog, moving through obligations. Angela, on the other hand, lives in open space. No rigid timetable, the ability to float from place to place. And yet she often admits her days dissolve, one bleeding into the other, leaving her wondering if freedom itself can become monotony. Different lives, different choices, the same numbness. The blur doesn't announce itself with a crash. It creeps in softly, like fog slipping across the valley floor. You look up one morning and realize you can't tell where the week began or where it ended. Time hasn't stopped, but it feels as though it has lost its edges. That's the ache of every day feeling the same, the erosion of meaning hidden inside protection. There was a season after retirement when mornings became a hollow loop. I woke before dawn out of habit. I set the kettle on the stove, poured tea into the same chipped mug, opened my journal to a fresh page. Each day I wrote the date neatly at the top, as though that single act could anchor me in time. Then I stared at the lines. The pen moved, but the words were shallow, predictable. When I looked back over weeks of entries, the handwriting looked nearly identical, the thoughts recycled. The pages felt like copies, one pressed against the other. At first, I called it safety. I told myself I had earned this sameness, that the absence of urgency was peace. But the longer it lasted, the more it suffocated. The rhythm that once gave me comfort started to feel like quicksand. The more I repeated it, the more invisible I felt. There was no event to mark one morning from the next, no pulse strong enough to break the fog. I began to wonder if my life had simply gone on without me. And then one morning, something shifted. Outside my window, high in the branches of the gum tree, I noticed a nest I hadn't seen before. Twigs carefully woven, fragile yet determined. I leaned forward and caught sight of two tiny heads, beaks open, waiting. I realized I had looked through that same window every day, yet only now did I see what was alive within it. The nest had been there, the birds had been there, but I hadn't. It wasn't the world that was empty, it was me who had stopped noticing. Stephen admits he knows this ache. He works hard, attends to his family, fills every hour with duty, and yet when he looks back, he wonders if anything truly mattered. I do everything right, he told me once, and still I feel like none of it counts. Angela carries the same confession, though it wears different clothes. I have all the freedom in the world, she once sighed, but most nights I feel like I've wasted another day. Their lives couldn't be more different, but the blur finds them both. Safety without soul is suffocation. Sameness hides beauty until you look twice. What appears to be wasted time often carries life, if only we let ourselves see it. Blur is not absence. Blur is blindness. That realization came to me slowly as I paged back through my journals. At first, the entries looked identical, the same dates, the same slanted handwriting, the same complaints repeated like a broken record, but then I noticed the differences. One morning, the ink bled heavier, pressed down by the weight of my hand. Another day, the letters leaned sharper as though impatience had tilted them. What I thought was sameness was in fact a quiet map of my inner shifts. I like the perspective that ordinary things only seem dull until you look deeply. It resonates with me because I've lived its truth. The blur disguises detail, but detail is always there, waiting. The light through the same kitchen window changes hue hour by hour. The sound of footsteps on the stairs never falls in the same pattern twice. Even my own breath carries subtle variations, steady one moment, shallow the next. When I call it monotony, it is usually because I've stopped paying attention. The ordinary is only dull until you look deeply. I've written those words across a page more than once. They remind me that sameness isn't always the enemy. Blindness is. The blur forms not because life is empty, but because I am absent from it. I think of Stephen again. His routines are endless. Meetings, school runs, family dinners. He tells me, sometimes I look back on a week and all I see is boxes checked, nothing real left behind. Angela offers the same ache in another form. My days are wide open, but they dissolve. I can't hold on to any of them. Their words echo each other, proof that both structure and freedom can dissolve into blur when sight is missing. I don't claim I've broken free of this completely. I still lose days, sometimes weeks, to fog. But I've learned a detour. Routine itself is not the prison. Routine is the frame. What I choose to place inside it, my noticing, my attention, decides whether it becomes a work of art or a cage. Maybe you've felt the ache too. Days moving but unmoving. Hours repeating like echoes. If so, I wonder with you, what beauty might still be hidden inside the blur, waiting for us to look twice? The ordinary only feels empty when you stop listening to it. I remember walking through a monastery courtyard years ago. The air was cool, stone paths smoothed by centuries of feet. From inside the hall came the sound of chanting. The same words, the same tones, rising and falling in endless rhythm. At first, I thought it was lifeless, repetition without meaning, but the longer I listened, the more I heard. Each voice carried its own weight. Some were steady, others cracked with age, a few tentative and soft. What seemed like sameness became texture, each tone woven into the next. I returned the next morning, and again the chant filled the air. It was the same words, the same rhythm, but it wasn't the same. The difference wasn't in the sound alone, but in the way I noticed. The sameness had been alive all along, waiting for me to see. Stephen often speaks of his work days blending together, the same commutes, the same inbox, the same meetings. He once told me, I do it all, but by the end of the week I can't tell one day from the other. Angela's life though unstructured, carries the same blur. Even with all this freedom, she confessed, my days collapse into each other like they never happened. Their words remind me of those chants, proof that sameness isn't empty. Blindness is. One evening back home, I lit a candle and sat by the window. The flame flickered, steady yet shifting with each draught. I stared until the minutes blurred. Nothing dramatic occurred. And yet, in its quiet, I felt renewed. The blur broke. Not because the world changed, but because I finally noticed what was already there. You can do everything right and still feel nothing mattered. You can do nothing at all and still feel trapped. Both reveal the same blindness. Stephen lives with structure that holds his world together, yet he admits it feels lifeless. His words lingered with me. I follow the same routine. I carry every responsibility, and still I feel like none of it means anything. Angela, in her openness, has echoed the same despair. I have whole days with no rules, she sighed, but I go to bed feeling like I never lived them. Two different roads, one shared ache. I've walked both. I carried obligation until my days blurred into utility, and I wandered freely until my days blurred into vacancy. Both left me numb. The detour is smaller than I once believed. Routine is not prison, and freedom is not salvation. Routine is only the frame. Freedom is only the space. What matters is presence inside them. When I look twice, sameness becomes rhythm. When I bring attention, repetition becomes devotion. What suffocates me in blindness becomes sacred in sight. There is a perspective I've come to trust. Sameness sharpens if you let it. Like a whetstone, repetition wears away the surface until something hidden comes alive. What feels like monotony can be the very ground where meaning emerges. So I ask myself often, what beauty am I overlooking? What detail waits in the blur, hidden because I haven't dared to notice? The blur isn't proof of nothing happening. It's proof of not noticing. Tonight, as I drive the same familiar road home, the dashboard clock glows numbers I've seen 1,000 times. The road bends where it always bends. The gums rise where they always have. For a moment, it threatens to collapse into sameness. Then, almost without trying, I noticed the mist hanging low among the trees, the flash of headlights scattering silver across wet leaves, the faint smell of damp earth. None of it has ever been exactly this way before. Stephen once admitted, "My weeks disappear. I don't know where they go." Angela said to me, "I drift through days, and by night I can't hold on to a single one." Their words echo in my chest as I realize the blur is not emptiness. It is my blindness. The road feels steady, almost plain, each line and curve resembling the last. For years I mistook this repetition as proof of nothing happening, as if sameness meant emptiness, but now I see it differently. Repetition isn't the absence of life. It is its quiet rhythm. What makes the days dissolve into blur is not their similarity, but my refusal to see them. When I turn away from detail, everything fades. Yet when I lean closer, the smallest things come alive. The hum of an engine settling, the texture of gravel on the shoulder, the way light shifts across the same stretch of road. The familiar is not barren, it only waits for attention. I once believed meaning had to arrive with grand events, milestones, breakthroughs, first times, but the truth is gentler, almost hidden. What I dismissed as monotony was, for them, devotion. And perhaps every repeated day is asking me the same thing: to enter, not escape. The bend ahead looks no different than the last. Maybe tomorrow won't look different either. But if I step into it awake, if I let my eyes rest on what is already here, then sameness doesn't erase me. It roots me, and perhaps that is enough to make even the blur a kind of sacred ground.